Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Coffee Review. It is December 12th, and we're doing things a little different today because we're in Teams land. We're having some issues with our other hosting platform, but either way, we're here to have some fun today, and we've got an Espresso Yourself edition, which is usually where we bring on a guest. So you'll see our friend Matt here, who we met well, not many, couple years ago at XCon, and we've been talking for a long time. So longtime friend of MCR, and he's got a really fascinating story to talk about. So before we get to that, it's December. I know it's a little quieter. Hopefully, you're staying healthy and happy out there. I'm loaded up on cold meds, so bear with me as we go here. But how are you feeling today, Michael?
I'm good. So you got sick too? I feel like it's going around. Most people are getting sick right now with the holidays and people traveling and just all of the bugs that come around with the holiday season. So hopefully you'll get better here soon. But thank you, Matt, for joining us. We met at XCon. I know sad. Everyone is saying sigh for XCon, but hopefully they bring it back. There was no word when I talked to one of the, what is his title? He's a like partner investigator or something like that, with Bluebeam, like joint partnership or something like that. That's his development, is his title. But yeah, hopefully, he didn't give me any info about it being pushed out. People did ask, so we'll see what happens. But for now, we do have MCR, so we can use that as a subset for XCon as we all build this community together. But it's good over here in Tucson. Well, sorry, Phoenix. Our weather is starting to cool down. What about you, Matt?
Actually, it's not too bad here in Omaha. We're warm for the season. Today's a little cool. We're only supposed to get around freezing, but the rest of the week and the weekend, we're supposed to be in the 50s, which is kind of abnormal for us. So it'll be kind of nice.
Nice. 50 during the day?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll still hit the 20s overnight, but
Yeah, I think our lows are 44 this week. Not bad. With a high of 69, 70.
Our,
That's
our
every
highs are, I
perfect.
think, our highs in the 20s, so we still got, I don't know, 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground. So I went from 60 degrees to 60 degrees in Little Rock, and I come home to 20 degrees in snow, and my body's like, nope, take me back, or you're going to be sick. So,
Yeah, we haven't had any of that snow word yet, so we're doing pretty good.
good deal.
Yeah, that's because you travel for onboarding, and our folks that started on our team got sick too. So I'm assuming it just got spread around.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
everyone
all
got
good.
sick. Well, with that, Matt, give us a little bit of your background. How did you start out in the industry? Where did you and how did you get to where you're at today?
Okay. Well, as far as starting with review, I've been using it for a little over 9 years now. I really didn't have any experience until I left uh, the government sector and went into the private sector, working for a local office of a large engineering firm. And didn't take me long playing with it, using it. They primarily used it for sessions, plan reviews, project collaboration type work. Um, and I kind of started doing a lot of the tutorials that Review has built in, and started working with it. And it didn't take me long to see how powerful it could be in certain aspects, to where I started building a bunch of custom tools for a lot of the project specific work that I was doing at the time. And that's really what led me to my first XCon in 2019 back in DC, at which time Angela there with Bluebeam kind of talked me into starting the Omaha Bug here in Omaha. So I've been the bug champ of that since November of 2019.
And
And
that's Angela LaFlay, right?
F, Angela F,
Okay.
AFF.
Yeah.
AFF. Okay. I always say it
she's in
wrong, but
charge of.
it's like a weird spelling. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. She helps coordinate all the bugs around the world, and it was kind of a neat learning experience for me, especially attending XCon in 19 and seeing how others used it and everything else. And that's really kind of where I started to blossom with using it more and using it in a lot of different ways. I mean, aside from building project specific tools and markups to even started using collaborative, say, design, schematic design. We actually did a project in California where we did the design in a studio session. It was a kind of a remodel. So we had original building plans and all of the disciplines worked in the session so that everybody could see what the other was doing. And it really kind of made an interesting process and kind of sped the process up of getting through schematic design, because you weren't waiting for one discipline to finish their design. You could all see what the other was doing and adjust accordingly on the fly. So it really worked pretty cool in that way.
And with sessions, so when you first started using Bluebeam, the company you went from into the private sector, they were already using sessions.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
When I went to the engineering firm, they'd been using, I mean, they're a large user of Review, like 7,000 licenses of Review.
Wow.
And COVID really kind of expounded on their use as well, because instead of having a lot of in-person meetings, we kind of relied on Review and studio sessions to do a lot of that work that we used to do in person. So.
And did you feel like leaving? So you left the government sector. Do you think it would have been a benefit to them in the government sector if they had what you're using now?
Oh God, yes. I so wish I could have had Review when I was with the state fire marshal's office, doing inspections and plan review. It would have streamlined so much. And that's actually kind of what I did my presentation on. We were doing similar work at the AE firm for a particular client. And so I built all these custom markups, doing building assessments, associated cost using custom columns, and basically then using the report system. We get back from the site visit, and you basically had to just do a little proofreading and click print, and your report was done for the client. And they absolutely loved it as well, because of the detail we were able to provide them with using markups and providing a lot of that data as part of the markups, attaching photos, and then everything being linked to their floor plan of their building. It just made the world so easy for them. I still use a little bit of it that way in my current role, but that was really kind of my start with it, and it's kind of blossomed from there. When people ask me about Review, I tell them, well, think of this. Think of Adobe Pro, Excel, AutoCAD, all lumped into one and then put on steroids.
I like
because
that.
You can really kind of
yeah.
You get the best features of all of those all in one spot. So,
because what would be the old workflow? It would be, would you still do things handwritten to review for code compliance, and then from there use PowerPoint and Excel?
Yeah, pretty much. You use PowerPoint to mark up things. You would use Excel for the costing. At the fire marshal, I mean, that would have been the greatest thing to be able to have that much detail at one. I mean, in those days, not that far ago. I mean, it's been 10 years since I left there, and we would basically write everything out. And so it was all Word documents with cut and paste from codes and everything else. And, those of us that were a little more tech, we'd save, certain language so that we could reuse it again, but it was still, you had to repeat that. Whereas when I started creating the markups, that code language became part of the markup. So you didn't have to go look for it. You didn't have to go do anything specific with it. Simply putting that markup on the drawing brought the specific code language with it. And then you were able to add additional details to that, which was super beneficial to our clients.
And was that when you started doing those custom markups? How long did it take you to figure that out and create like code compliant markups?
I'm still working on it. And then I was just talking with some of the people with Bluebeam with the iPad version, because that's what we chose to do a lot of our field markup with, mainly for the camera, compared to a Surface Pro. It's a better camera. It allowed us to do some things a lot easier in the field. But some of my markups, I'm not sure if it's updates in review, updates in iOS. One thing I have found is some of my markups that were grouped no longer are grouped. Something blew them apart, and so I'm having to just regroup some of them and put them back together. But that was probably some of my most challenging with building those at first, and until I started, watching you guys and go into some other things on what order you put your different pieces together before you group them, so that they stay as a group, that they size and resize properly, that if you want to double click on it to add additional text to it, that you can add that in the right area, and it doesn't want to add that in your text box or in your typewriter portion of your markup, which really kind of just screws up the whole markup. So I'm still having to adjust my markups. Once in a while I find one, you go and scale it and like, dang it, I thought I had that fixed, but
Yeah, so are you using sessions for the field then on the iPad, or because you're not using cloud, right?
No, and that was the big discussion I was having with Bluebeam, because I use the iPad so much. We were discussing the interface with cloud and some of the ways that I use it, that cloud as its current configuration doesn't suit my needs. And that's kind of the still way I use it at Methodist Health System when I do building assessments, code reviews, take the iPad around, drop my markups on there, take a photograph of the item, and then I'm able to, quickly distribute those reports when I get back to the managers or the directors of those facilities to be able to address the items. And so,
so you're just bringing up a PDF. You're not creating a session, or you are creating a session?
Not creating a session for those. Now I use projects a lot more than sessions.
Okay, so you're opening it up, checking it out, and are you feel like it's because I'm intrigued by this, like, because I haven't talked to someone here yet. Well, people always talk to me about it, but I like from experience, does it crash a lot then when you're out in the field?
I can say it used to. It doesn't as much as it used to.
Okay.
One of the things that I noticed in an older version of iOS when we started doing this on the iPad was if you still had like a markup selected, so it still had its boundary box on it, and you went to click save, for whatever reason, it would crash every time.
Okay.
Once you just clicked onto the PDF so that there was nothing highlighted, nothing selected, so it was a matter of learning some of the intricacies. But lately with the newer versions of Review for iPad and the newer versions of iOS, I really don't have a problem with it crashing. With projects or with when I first started doing it, we used Dropbox, because that was some similar issues with projects was the checkout, and then you get the difference between the two files, between what's on the cloud and what's on the iPad, and which one do you really want to keep? And so when I first started doing these markups, when I was with the AE firm for the clients, I use Dropbox all the time to keep our files and then bring them onto the iPad, mark them up, put them back onto Dropbox. But right now, it works really slick with projects. I've got, between the different entities in our health system, each one of them has their own projects. So where our facility people can go and access the drawings, whether it's life safety plans, blank floor plans, sprinkler drawings with shutoff valves. I'm working to try and expand our digital library, so to speak, so that we can have an interactive PDF of our facilities. Granted, nothing has been done until I started here with the health system 3 years ago, so it's a huge undertaking, but I'm starting with some of the smaller facilities, because my goal would be to have, a sprinkler valve, you click on it, tells you all the properties, tells you where it covers, electrical panels the same way. You click on the electrical panel and it pops up, the hyperlink to the panel schedule. So if somebody updates the panel schedule, you're not always updating drawings. Everything is hyperlinked, so that as long as you don't relocate that file somewhere else, the hyperlink stays good.
And
so
are you
back up a little bit here a second? We've talked about how you got started in the industry, but we didn't really talk about what industry you're in. Now we've talked about inspections a little bit. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what do you do every day? Because I want to expand on what you just talked about, because there are solutions for that, but I need a little bit more context.
Sure. So currently, and for the last 3 years, I'm basically a fire protection engineer. Almost completed my degree anyways. That's what I was doing with the AE firm. And I was doing a lot of work for Nebraska Methodist Health Systems. They were one of our large clients. And then they basically sucked me away from the big company to work direct for them. So my daily work and daily responsibilities are code compliance, not only for our construction projects and work we're doing, but code compliance from a CMS, a Medicare, Medicaid perspective, or Joint Commission perspective. So I keep the life safety drawings up to date. I perform routine walks of our facilities to document conditions and room changes, because like in every large organization, communications isn't always on the top. And so I'll be walking through a facility. I'm like, well, that was an exam room. That's now somebody's office. And I'm like, those are the simple, easy things that, like Joint Commission would ding us on because our life safeties aren't up to date. And so that's kind of my day-to-day workflow now. It varies between projects and code compliance, but prior to going to the engineering firm, I was with the state of Nebraska for 15 years. Started as a state electrical inspector and went from there to the state fire marshal's office as a code enforcement deputy / fire investigator.
All right, that makes perfect sense, because what you're talking about, when we're talking about life and safety and code compliance, sometimes firms are dealing with hundreds of different facilities, and there might be in different towns across the country. But if you're dealing with a handful that's in your region, then I think the solution I was going to mention, while it's not Bluebeam, there are things that are getting more focused on the inside of the building and that sort of asset management, that location. Hey, let's click on this valve. Who made it? Who installed it? How long is the warranty? What's the serial number? All that metadata, just like we were getting in Bluebeam, but have it be more locationally focused. And that's going to be more of a procedure that we're seeing with the Autodesk and Esri partnership through what's called GeoBIM and the Autodesk Construction Cloud that we've talked about here before on MCR. But GeoBIM is doing exactly that, which is pretty exciting, because you're going to be able to do that on a device and be like, oh, look, here's that thing. I need to go talk to this contractor who installed it on Tuesday, March 5th or whatever.
Yeah, and we have a lot of that in our CMMS, our building management, or not building management, but our management system. But we've been, the health system is been working for the last 3 years to try and update and possibly switch CMMS programs to keep a lot more of that data, but the thing we're finding is it's not so portable. It's not so readily accessible. And then those ones that you say that, that are out there, between our IT and budgets,
Right.
are fairly limited. And that's kind of why we've started taking some of this. And obviously, with me being in charge of code compliance and our fire protection systems, those are the areas that I'm starting with, as far as getting that documentation into our drawings and making that a little bit interactive so the information is readily available. And that's where cloud, like I talked to the Bluebeam crew, if they were able to get a few other features into cloud, such as measurements and a few other things that aren't currently in the cloud thing, I think that would be huge for us, because then we wouldn't necessarily have to have all the licenses for everybody to have access, because I went from a firm that had 6,000 plus licenses to we have 20 in our current job. There's 20 licenses. We have 4 of us with complete and 16 core licenses. And so would I like to see more people use it? But that's kind of challenging. And that's where I think the cloud could benefit us, to where our contractors could be able to see the same things without having to have Bluebeam per se, just by giving them permissions through our Bluebeam through cloud. So
yeah, it's almost like you just wish they would update it quicker. So if it's the release updates of it where it's like you see the possibility and you have they probably have a long laundry list of like what they want it added into it. But I think we all see the possibility, because you could create a project essentially for every building that you're managing, right? And then that hosts it all, and then you can invite people without a license, right, as a free user to look at it on their phones and mobile devices. But taking back to where you're sorry.
No, as I was saying, that was the conversation we had. Bluebeam now has, the different platforms they're trying to maintain, and it's like, well, their questions to me were, so how do you use the review for iPad that doesn't fit Bluebeam Cloud? And so we had a really good conversation, almost an hour meeting with some of their developers on trying to see where it's headed and if we could make that possible, because I'm sure, like any software developer, they'd like to be able to maybe not have a separate app, if we could make all the functionality as part of the cloud-based application. So I'd be all for that if we can get the features I need.
Mm-hmm. It's funny because the past week I've had 2 or 3 calls with code compliance or inspectors, and I've never had calls with them before. And it was just wild that all this is kind of coming to thing. And yesterday when I was on the call, I was demoing Bluebeam for them, and I was telling them how it could help them. And they're like, this looks like too much work for us to set up to get into doing code compliance and inspections with Bluebeam Review. Do you agree with that?
If you wanted to build everything yourself, yes, it takes a lot. Like I said, when I first presented, and my first introduction to XCon was in 2019 in DC, that was actually my presentation, was based on code compliance for AHJs or anybody like that. And actually, I've, within our bug and through other XCons and stuff like that, I actually have a lot of AHJ contacts. They now have their own bug. And basically all the tools that I built, I freely shared and said, here, use, go forth, modify as you see fit for your needs. Because if you had to build everything yourself, it takes a lot of effort. I mean, fortunately, I was fortunate enough that, we had a good client when I was with the AE firm that was willing to allow me to put in the hours to develop these tools along with my employer, because it really benefited everybody. projects timeframes got decreased, cost estimating got decreased. Everything just went faster, and then there was no questions for our client as to what was the issue we were talking about and where was it in their buildings. So
you're talking of almost, well, you said 2019, but you started before that. So let's say over a 5-year process to get to where you are today, which is, in line with what Liz is saying in the chat. Like, even switching from AutoCAD to Revit is not an overnight thing. Switching from land development desktop to Civil 3D or Bentley to AutoCAD, like, there's so many different transitions that all of these industries that we deal with do. And while there might not be overnight, they're always usually worth it if you have the patience and the vision. But in that 5-year process that you've been doing this at your firm, is there any mulligan moments where you wish that you could have gone back, like, I spent 6 months on this and I probably shouldn't have, and we can edit this out if your boss is watching, but, like, you know what I mean? Sometimes you take a step and you're like, I tried it, but that really wasn't it. Let's go back. Have you had many of those?
I wouldn't say that I had any where we went back to the drawing board. Mm-hmm. I think it helped that partially being self-taught, learning review on my own, when we started this process, we started small. So our first few ones, we started by just maybe using the markup, or a simplified markup. And then we started expounding by including more of the code language as part of the markup, and then expanded more with the custom columns to add cost to certain markups. And so it was kind of a continual work in progress, so to speak.
And Matt, is that cost associated to what it would cost to bring it back to code compliance?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So just one of the simple things would be, say, like an exit sign or an emergency light. So we had symbols that was it not working? Was there not enough coverage? What the code item was. And so, say, to repair an exit light or an emergency light had a fee associated with that markup of $100. And so every time we drop that markup onto the drawings, that's another $100 that was added into the total for that. So a lot of the items we were able to associate costs with, and that was, again, one of the learning things as we kind of expanded, was how do we associate a certain cost with a certain item? Some were simple like that. Some of the deficiencies were clearly more involved, and we either had to go back and do that after the fact, when we go back in and, so it's not associated with a markup, but again, having that metadata, we were able to go back in and look at what we put and say, okay, that's, a $5,000 cost, and be able to put that in that box and not necessarily associate it with the markup, which still, was a huge time saver to us.
Very cool.
Yeah, so that conversation with that client that Jason was talking about, the transition to a new solution, it could have been one of two ways, right? Like, you would have taken time, you're going to boost efficiencies like your firm has seen, Matt, like in 3 to 5 years, or there's always that ability to talk to someone like Jason or myself and pay a cost to have it done, and then you're up and running, right? And then you're seeing that efficiency boosts as well.
Sure. Yeah. And then that's why I gave all my markups out. I mean, it's like, there's nothing proprietary in here. I'm like, feel free to share these. And like I said, several AHJs around us have started using review. Their, I wouldn't say issue necessarily, but kind of like things with Procore, where you've got costs and time and everything else associated with it. These municipalities already have a software that manages like their plan submittal. So then it's, okay, how do we take those PDF plans out of program A, use them in review, take them back, but I've helped a lot of AHJs with markups, workarounds, workflows, and adjusting their procedures to fit their needs. And that's having spent 15 years in AHJ, I have no problem doing that with them. And, my previous employer and my current employer don't have a problem because we work with them as well on regular basis for our projects. So it's kind of a good working relationship for us.
So help me out with that acronym there. AAHJ?
AHJ, authority having jurisdiction.
There you go. Authority having jurisdiction. That one doesn't come up very often. I like that one.
I've been trying to figure out the acronyms every time he says it. I've been saying them in my head.
No, AHJ, that's in the code world, that's he who has the authority to tell you yes or no. And
right.
So whether that's a building inspector, electrical inspector, your insurance company, those are some of the AHJs a lot of people don't think about out there. But most of the ones we work with are our building and fire code officials, and those are the ones that I've worked with the most across the country and in my area with Bluebeam and markups. So
wonderful.
And that's a way to kind of create an asset management type of solution that's not existent. Because Arlie was talking about it earlier with Esri and that ability to integrate into ACC, and I see that coming forward with Tandem, which is Autodesk's kind of newer solution, but it was from BIM 360. Or BIM Ops was the old one, is what it was called, for facility maintenance, essentially, where you can see asset management, but you have to have a digital twin to bring that in and all that other stuff. But like thinking about where the industry is going and these stepping stones of how can we be more efficient. And I think that's, when it comes down to it at the end of the day, is there's an issue with efficiency in our industry. And that point of when it finally clicks is that hard part of, hey, you could be more efficient if you did X, Y, and Z now to get you there. But the X, Y, and Z is the hard part for people to grasp, I feel like, for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and we've even had with our health system, we've had, I don't know if you guys, Solarian, they're they've kind of got a CMMS. They've got like an environment of care. Their whole software they've come and presented to us, and it's really kind of an interesting process. They're designed pretty much around healthcare facilities, but they have the same thing. You could take your PDF of your facility and put all your CMMS information linked to an object in there, and everything flows between those. And you can do your preventive maintenance, predictive maintenance, failures. We just haven't, again, selected on a service for that. But that's another one that I know is out there, that you're literally creating like a digital twin of your building with all the components and systems, and as much as you want to put in it. From my perspective, if I want to put every smoke detector in their system, for tracking, for inspection and testing requirements, it's whatever level of detail you want to include in those and what you want to show. And I don't know where we'll end up. Like I said, I know for my portion, I like the review, and I would like to see our cloud expand to be able to do that and make it more accessible. I mean, right now we're looking at adding some more iPads and using the $10 app.
Yep.
That's all they need, and the studio project, and they can have access to all the drawings. And so some of our guys that maintain like our fire doors or our sprinkler systems, they would be able to have the drawings on the iPad, or be able to pull them for whatever building they're in, because they're all in a studio project. And that's kind of been my goal, is going towards what I keep telling everybody, a single source of truth. We don't have 6 different documents out there that, okay, this was 2015, this was 2018, this is 2022. As part of my role, we update our life safety drawings, our building plans annually. And instead of having a copy of those in every year, it's like, no, we just keep updating. Here's where you go for the latest and greatest, and don't have to worry about which one you're pulling or which one you're finding. And that's kind of the power that I see, and is my current goal with a review, is developing that single source of truth.
Yep. And I think that goes along. You mentioned digital twin, and I think that, I mean, it's a cool term, but twin is like, well, it's a copy. No. Twin, it should be evolving with it, right? That single source of truth. If those smoke detectors that we were talking about get upgraded to one that has the fire detection one, or the smoke detection, not the the heat detection one, the
or
photo,
carbon monoxide, or
like, it's a $10 thing, but you can swap that model out, right? Or have some sort of evolution and not just a copy. Especially, I got a little triggered when you said, oh, the 2019 version and the 2020 version, because I've seen it before in different things. But it's like, come on, guys. We've moved on from that years ago, but it's still slow. So
yes,
single source of truth. We will always preach that, right along with Doug here in the chat. So what do you think is the biggest barrier for keep people from adopting that technology? We know that's where we're going to end up, but what do you think the barrier is that's preventing people from that? And don't steal Doug's answer.
Well, I just saw Doug's answer pop up, and I agree. But for different or multiple reasons. I mean, I spent 6 years in the AE firm, where our projects were all Revit. Now, I didn't personally do Revit, but I mean, I know that's the way our projects went out, but some of the BIM techs that I did work with that were doing the models, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't create it correctly, or like you were saying, Jason, if you don't maintain it, I can tell you from my experiences in the Revit, it's supposed to be you're building that 3D model. Every pipe is connected to this pipe, or every duct is connected. Well, I can tell you in the real world, because of people, time, budgets, your model doesn't come out of there perfect. I'll guarantee you.
Well, construction's going to change too, right? Like how it even it's a design intent. So even if you put it as a design, it may not have been constructed in that manner.
Absolutely. And that's just another piece of the puzzle. I mean, it doesn't matter that your drawing doesn't show this 4-inch connected to this 4-inch. Obviously the guy in the field is going to make those connections, but what happens when you've got to move it 5 feet, from that drawn location? And I can tell you, especially in healthcare, we're continually remodeling, changing, areas of our buildings. And that's kind of what started part of this, is we need to have good information of what's where to begin with. Otherwise, you open this wall up and you find, 30 things you didn't know were in that wall that now you either have to move or do something else with, and that slows the projects down, increases project costs. Where if you could have that, so to speak, we'll call it a live digital twin, hey, Jason, where you keep track of everything. And I think people, time, and money are the biggest hurdles to that. Because, construction is on such a pace today, everybody's design build, and everything moves on the fly. And then you kind of hit on it there, Michael. We have the same issue. It's okay, it moved. Who kept track of that move? Where did that get updated in the drawings? I hound on our contractors, and they hate me for it, but I hound on them. I need accurate as-builts. I don't just need a line that says you went from point A to point B. I need to know where things actually are, how they actually got installed. Most of them, what I get is I have, they take their original submittal drawing and they put a rubber stamp on that says as-built, and they resubmit it. And I'm like, well, I know that's not an as-built because I made you move this, this, and this. It's like, fix your drawing and then I'll consider accepting it. And again, that goes back to kind of my role now in the health system, is keeping track of those, trying to get that updated information. I mean, we just had a recent project where they claimed they didn't know the pipes were in the wall. Well, however, if you looked at our current life safety drawings and our current building floor plans, it shows a great big chase with all these pipes in the wall. So I'm like, why weren't you aware that they were in there? I mean, and absolutely, I think that's where we're going. I think that's where we need to go. But people, cost.
I think it's the old mentality too, like a seasoned mentality of fix it, get it done, we'll worry about it later type, where we're not used to this implementation of a digital age where we have access to updated drawing sets, and maintaining those is what we as an industry need to implement, and the ripple effect of that, right? You're fixing it now, you're getting your job done is what people are looking to do versus like, hey, how do we make this better for future work when someone else comes in and has to do exactly what we're doing now?
Right. How do we keep that going? The other thing that comes with that, and I know you guys have talked about it, standardization.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's a huge part, even with as-builts. I have different AE firms using different design, different CAD standards, their Revit, whatever they bring it into, they have things labeled differently than what we have. And so when I try to bring in a remodeled floor plan onto my existing building, things don't line up. They're on different layers. That's the other thing.
I just feel your pain right now.
Slowly working to try and give our firms, here's say the Methodist standard. Here's how we want things done, because every firm, every outfit has their different ways of doing things. And then for us to keep that data makes it challenging as well. If we had one big digital Revit model of the whole building and everybody worked in that same model, hey, again, there's our live digital twin that, benefits everybody. But from working in that area for 6 years, I can say it's going to take a lot to get there, because it's a lot of attention to detail that not everybody has.
Right. Doug put in the chat that thinking with a digital mindset takes some effort. And that I like that quote, because it kind of resonating with me right now, because it's going to require a shift from all of us, and regardless of what industry you're in, to actually give it the effort. Like, some people are like, okay, I'll do it, whatever. But to actually, you're going to have to try to get to where we need to be to make all these systems work as intended. Do you find that to be true, or am I alone on this island?
Nope, absolutely. I mean, it's, I think there's several factors. Again, you've got the generational gap between, there's still guys out there that, like me, we did it in pen or paper and pencil, and we've slowly moved and migrated. I mean, when I first took AutoCAD, it was in 1990, and it was AutoCAD version 9. And it's that slow progressive move, but then you've got, newer generation that, quick, templates, tools, copy and paste. Again, not on a soapbox, but I mean, that's one of the things I hate in this world is, oh, we did something similar over here, let's just copy and paste everything we did and bring it over to this other project. And while you may think it saves time, it may not save you a lot of time in the end by the time you fix all that. Like I said, having worked in that field, it's how much detail you can put in there. One of the things, being in the fire protection side, we looked at, and there's several companies out there that work with the AutoCAD or the Revit models, where if you assign like a wall a fire rating or a floor a fire rating, if you assign that correctly in the model, there are now softwares out there that can automatically design your fire stop systems for whatever you want to run through that wall and create that. But if you don't take that one little detailed step to call out that wall or that floor assembly correctly, the rest of your software doesn't work, and you kind of, you almost have to start over at that point again.
Right.
Yeah, we have a fire rating tool for our walls that creates color plans and schedules with it within Revit. But that's, again, right, you're adding, it's adding a parameter for you. But if you were to do it just internally, right, you're adding a parameter within Revit, as I hear Jason cringe.
If you use the different symbols, whether you're using the single dot long dash type that's in standard in Revit, or you're using the one NFPA 170 symbols for rated walls, if you're just showing that wall, and you're adding that symbol on your drawing, and you're not actually telling the drawing that is a 1 hour wall, your softwares don't communicate that way, and that doesn't help. I mean,
you might as well be designing in Revit. I mean, in AutoCAD, right? I mean, if you're just changing lines and putting symbols on it, you're not using it.
You're just adding a line to it. You got to go back to AutoCAD, because that's really all you're doing. I mean, and then if you don't call out in your details section, if you don't call out the proper detail for that wall, then that doesn't help either. You have to know that that's supposed to be a 1 hour and what that means. And that's some of the biggest challenges from a fire protection area. Is we have a lot of people that, and I'm sure your industry, everything else is the same, terms that are used with what they think is the right meaning, but is not the right meaning. I just saw somebody post on LinkedIn a thing about terms that are misinterpreted all the time. And, especially in the fire service field, we have a lot of those. You take a smoke resisting, a smoke partition, a smoke barrier, a fire barrier, a fire wall. All 5 of those terms have different definitions, different construction types, totally different meanings, but yet a lot of people use several of those interchangeably and don't truly understand what the difference in those terms are. And that doesn't help our professions either.
So clear standardization. And I think it comes back to that airing mentality, right? It's not a clock in, clock out. It's what we're constructing for a deliverable for, at the end of the day, a client and people's experience through what we're providing. And how do we change that mindset of, this living digital twin, even if it comes to a portable document format, with your example of updating sets, and how do we evolve at a quicker pace than we all hope it would be at where we're at today, but at a quicker pace, seamlessly, like, Jason having a call with the client the other day, speaking that they don't want to embrace it because it's going to take too long, right? I think maybe that's another hurdle where people just don't have an open mind to be more efficient and change.
Correct. And one of the interesting things, I don't remember which ex-con it was at, but I was talking to some code officials where they had just switched to using Review for doing their processes. And, basically it was just installed on everybody's computer who needs it. And they all look at them like, oh my God, this is overwhelming. Look at all these markups. Look at all these, everything else. And what he did was kind of customized it for each person and their role. That's the other unique thing about Review, in my opinion, is you can customize it in so many ways. And so what he did is he customized it down just to what tools, features, things an individual needed. And he says that made their transition so much easier, because instead of looking at the whole enchilada, they're only looking at one small piece, and it made them more willing to engage in the digital platform and go that way. I mean, when I first started, we'd been using Review for years, and yet we still had guys that would, send a set of drawings in a session for review, but yet we had to color code the old school, what was it, blue, green, and red, check marks from the paper days, but that's what they wanted, and they didn't understand the power in review that's just creating another markup, where you could actually put something on there with data that means something, and you can communicate back and forth as to what did you really intend by putting a red check mark that says, you need to change this or address this, which is the old pen and paper style of review. So it's overcoming those challenges of embracing, kind of like you said, Jason, the digital platform, and going forward, and not saying, how is this going to create more work for me? It's how is this going to save me work? How can I embrace this technology to save me work? I constantly see memes and stuff where it's like, don't pay by the hour, pay by what they actually do. If Michael, if you can finish that in 4 hours, where it would normally take somebody 8 hours, no, you don't just get paid the 4 hours. That's 8 hours worth of work. Some of our industries are doing that. I mean, the automobile mechanic world is notorious for that.
Oh yeah.
It's like, an oil change, it's X number of dollars, no matter how long it takes you to do it. So if you can do 12 of them in a day versus somebody who can do 8 of them in a day, you just made an extra four times your money there for the extra 4 that you got in. And I think we need to embrace that, and I think with that comes, if you embrace that perspective, I think that will bring along some of those other attention to detail things,
I didn't think of it that way. Like, so
the willingness to create that quality product.
Yeah,
as opposed to just getting it out by a date and time. I mean, that was the most frustrating thing in the AE firm is, well, it's due to the client tomorrow, but we're still moving walls. It's like, okay, you're still moving walls. Nobody else has the time, the ability to do their work, and again, it goes back to where we started doing little projects, or depending on, obviously you can't design a new building necessarily in a studio session, but there's a lot of work you can do that way, and you can all be working at the same time and see what each other's doing instead of waiting for one discipline to finish and hand it off to the next. I think that's the power for your AHJs and your enforcement, is everybody can be working in that set of drawings. When I started again with the fire marshal's office, you had to submit 2 paper copies of your building plans to our office. One we kept and reviewed, and one we put the same comments on and sent back to the designer. It's like, you think how much progress we've made, and that's only 10 years, well, 20 I guess since I started, but we just need to embrace that digital age and embrace technology instead of fearing it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you can go, Jason.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, I think we've come to that tipping point where it's like, all right, well, everybody has a toe in the water. Do we just get in, or do we like pull back? And pulling back, there's no good is going to come from that, right?
No, if you've got your toe in, somebody just needs to shove you in, and then you get all wet. So
yeah, but it's better to ease yourself in and like be purposeful about it. And I think that's where a lot of our industries are gonna, maybe they already are, at that stagnant point. Like, well, we came this far and we're not sure, but there's always benefits. Like, so everything that we've heard from you so far in this journey of yours, helping, with what you're doing, has been worth it. Is that a correct assessment?
Absolutely. When I had that conversation with the Bluebeam guys about review for iPad, I said, if you can't make cloud do everything I can do on the iPad, you're going to lose me as a client or as a customer, because you either have to maintain them all so that I can take advantage of those things, or make those same features available, in another platform. We can't all carry computers around. That's part of the digital age as well. we need to be able to have our electronic devices and not be restricted on what we can or cannot do from those devices anymore. I mean,
Yeah, it doesn't matter what device you want to be able to go from your phone to your computer, right? It's
yeah, I
the
mean, just
ability to be modular.
yeah, I mean, the think of the first things you probably had on your cloud, between your contacts lists and everything else, whether you're using Outlook or Google or whoever, that's seamless across all your devices. I don't have to enter, Jason Artley in every one of my devices. I enter it once,
Right.
it's in all, I get the same thing everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's been pretty, it's kind of spoils me a little bit with this whole Teams and Windows integration that we haven't had, even 5, 10 years ago from other places I've worked. But I don't want to be without it right now. So if we could do that in a more technical way with Bluebeam or cloud or whatever, where it would just integrate like that, that's where we need to go. And maybe we need to pull up the new Bluebeam CEO and grill him to see where he's going to go.
Well, I was given some information, but I can't share that. But I mean, that's their goal. Their goal is to expand on cloud, and it's just what limitations is there in the cloud versus what I have, in Review 21 on my computer, and how do we overcome those challenges? I mean, I think that's where everybody wants to see them, and I think that's where it should be their goal as far as striving with the cloud app.
And I think that's what we're all getting used to. Like, I'm an Apple user, so I mean, my watch and my phone and my laptop all work together. And if I am working on my laptop and I want to pull up a web browser that I have on my phone, I can do that. It's wild, and the same thing with Teams. I can pull up my phone and, like, oh, I started that draft on my desktop computer, and I can finish my email. I think we're getting used to that, and I think that sort of congruence between that ecosystem is where they need to be. But you've seen the iPad app. Anyway, so on a different note.
Yeah, I love my iPad app. Like I said, I've been using that. I mean, the firm I worked for had me do an analysis. What do we want to use? They would have preferred us to go with Surface Pros at the time. And I'm like, well, okay, that's fine if you want to make that decision, but here's the restrictions on a Surface Pro. It costs you a full license of review. The camera is very, very limited. Some of the other things are more restrictive in trying to use a Surface Pro in the field. And that was our decision choice with the iPad. And I jumped into it with both feet, and I absolutely love it. I still use it. Even my employees that I've got underneath me we're using Review for iPad, and it does, I don't know what the technical number is. I said it does 80 to 85% of what's on Review 21. And there's even ways and tricks to incorporate some of that into the iPad from Review 21.
You would just need a full license
layers
somewhere, right? To start to create the tools. Yeah.
Correct. So like all my markups, I've started, as we talked at the beginning, these markups. Well, then I expounded on those and we made improvements. Well, then we started putting different markups on different layers. Well, that markup is assigned to that layer. So therefore, when I take that same markup and I use that on the iPad version, even though layers are not supported on the iPad version, that markup is assigned to that layer. So when I put that markup on the iPad and then I bring it back to Review 21, guess what? Those layers are all there because they're part of the markup and not part of the PDF at the time. It's kind of like, again, we talked about the different ordering when you group your markups. It's all kind of a learning curve and learning how to, I wouldn't say outsmart, but work smarter and work within the limitations of what you have. It's kind of like, I'm sure we all have little tricks that we have, where we try to outsmart IT by either putting something to Dropbox or something else. If we can't import a thing directly, there's ways we can go around that. We're not circumventing the security. We're just going at it in a different manner. And I think that's part of the limitations as well currently. Once we get rid of those limitations, things will work smoother. We talk
Be
about
more
the live.
efficient.
Isn't that virtually what AI is? I mean, isn't that everybody's thing now is talking AI and where AI leads us? And, I think that's the first step in AI is before you can get it to think for yourself, you've got to get it to exist.
Yeah.
Right. The AI is still, it's like 5 steps beyond what we were talking about earlier with digital twins. It's like, well, hey, if you're not willing to go here, are you really willing to jump all the way there?
I know.
So that's a whole other story, and we could spend all morning talking about that, because now I'm fired up. But unfortunately, we've come to the bottom of the hour, which is the end of our show. But Matt, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a fun conversation. Thanks for everybody who joined us on this pivot edition of a Teams thing for MCR. But we're going to try to get our normal platform fixed, and we'll see what happens from there. But in the meantime, Michael, I'll let you take us home.
Yeah, thanks, Hartley. Again, thank you, Matt. Truly appreciate you joining in and sharing your wealth of knowledge of jumping in.
It's wonderful. You guys are great. I love watching this, and hopefully we get an XCon back again here in the future.
Absolutely.
Likewise. See everyone in person. Thanks for joining in today. Again, we wouldn't be able to be here if it weren't for you and everyone else listening into the community. But until then, we will see you next time, either here or hopefully back in Zoom land. Thank you all.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. See ya.